Hey you, let's chat about mindful moments and how we can show up on purpose in our homeschools. Because I love Charlotte Mason's idea about we are creating an atmosphere and education is an atmosphere, but sometimes the education in the atmosphere ain't good. Because as they say, more is caught than taught. And that's also a useful concept for the good things and a not so useful thing for the bad things. And the reality is more is caught than taught, and our atmosphere teaches them a lot. And primarily the atmosphere starts with us. So how do you want to show up in your homeschool? Have you thought about it? For sure, we have to start by accepting the mess of who we really are. So I'm here because I've done the work and continue to do this work. And I know that you're here willing to do the work, to accept the mess that is you. And in our children, we get these little mini mirrors that reflect back to us all the stuff that we need to learn if we so choose to take on that mission. And that mission is possible, but it is a lot of work. And first we have to accept the mess of the reality of what's ever going on in here and here. And you want to find out more what that mess is? No, you don't. I feel ya. Except that when we pretend that there is no mess, the mess becomes a mountain mess. We have to see that when we're triggered by our kids, whether that means that we're frustrated that it's taking them an hour to get their shoes on before we go into extracurricular that was actually intended for them, or we're frustrated because one kid is fighting with another child, or in my experience, and I'll be vulnerable with you, it's one that I've experienced across the spectrum of parenting, and I realize how minute and silly it is, but it's real. Tell me if this is your scenario or not. When someone breaks something, is it in just my household that things are constantly getting broken? Because I didn't expect that much or that many things would get broken. So reality check. Stuff gets broken. They're kids. Who else is going to break the stuff? Yeah, me sometimes. But when they break stuff, it's a trigger for me. And I'm going to talk about that in our discussion about mindful moments today. Because A, that's not pretty, but B, I keep experiencing that. I have had that experience on repeat. We all have internal challenges that we address with our kids on repeat. It could be frustration or annoyance or impatience, or you fill in the blank. Whatever internal challenge you experience might be unique to you, but it is not unique to humanity. We experience them in a unique scenario called homeschool. It might be you sitting beside your child while you're trying to teach them something and you think, surely you can do this. I know you can do this. I saw you do this 2 days ago. What's the problem? Every time we have an uncomfortable emotion, whether it is that frustration or impatience or sadness or disappointment or all the uncomfortable feelings across the human spectrum, we can do something about them. We can determine to have a growth mindset. We can determine to do something and have a plan for that internal challenge. So what can we do? Well, that's why we're talking today, because I'm going to chat about mindful moments. Mindful moments that really are a time and space in your day to help you question your own internal reactions to things. Okay, so here is where I got this idea. From Dr. Amen's Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, probably about 10 to 15 years ago. And I've written a lot about it in my book, Homeschool Mama Self-Care, Nurturing the Nurturer. It's the base idea, one of the most important aspects of my fall Homeschool Mama retreat that's coming up. And it for sure is the key for me to figure out how to address the internal things that I've got going on. Because it really does influence my level of challenge internally. It influences my family's lives, obviously. But we can do something about it. What can we do? Here's what I suggest. If you are not already, if you haven't already got a plan of attack for the internal challenges that you have, then this is something that you could do as a practical tool. Inside your phone or a traditional alarm clock if you don't have a phone, put an alarm at the time of day that you often are most challenged. That could be the supper hour. That could be in the morning. It could be any time of day that you classically have a challenge. And if you don't know when that time of day is, I recommend taking a week to journal all of your uncomfortable emotions, or just even a couple of days, and write the scenario that is actually triggering you and put a tally mark beside that scenario. See how many times it repeats during that week, and then you can choose just one situation that is often triggering you, write it down, and then decide to work on that particular situation. So you've got an idea in your mind? Let's just go with the first thing that came to your mind. Whatever that is, whenever that is most frequently experienced, that's the time in the day that you are going to set your alarm clock, and it is going to ding for you. You are not going to remember this. If I tell you to create a mindful moment in your day, you may not remember to do that, because when we are in our most triggered space, the amygdala in our brain goes off like an alarm. Bing, 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 bing. Something's wrong. Something's bad. Something's unsafe. Very intense feelings related to that you're so into the intense feeling. This part of your brain is not thinking clearly, and you are not going to be intentional and think through your thoughts at that time. You're just instinctively going to be reactive and react the way that you've already practiced reacting to that scenario all the other times that you've practiced. And I'm guessing you've had a few times to practice that. So your goal is to create an actual alarm outside of your brain in your alarm. And when that alarm goes off, this is what you can do. We're going to start by feeling how you're feeling. What do you feel inside your hands? How does it feel inside your stomach? How does it feel inside your heart? Are you breathing quickly, shallowly, slow and long? What do you smell? Do you taste something? What do you hear? That right there is a grounding technique that just helps you to come inside your body to feel what's going on in your body. And then the next thing you can do is breathe. When people first introduced this idea to me, I just thought, breathing, like I'm breathing. It's good. I think it's an autonomic nervous system thing that keeps going until I'm no longer breathing, and then I'm not in charge of that. So what's the thing? I'm supposed to breathe? Okay, so if we intentionally breathe in a certain way, it will flow or slow down all of our physiological systems. It's like putting our foot on a brake. It will slow things down in our bodies. Dr. Caroline Leaf suggests that we do that 10 times, go through the process of doing these breathing exercises 10 times. So I'll take you through a very simple breathing exercise that you can include. Here's what I would do. I would breathe in for about 7 counts, hold it for about 4 or 5 counts, and then exhale it in about 5 counts, and do that 10 times. I'll do it once with you. Now, if you tried that alongside me, you'll know that it actually is very calming. It's very relaxing, and it forces your body to slow down. So that's the second tool, is to do breath work. The third thing that you can do at this mindful moment is to ask yourself how you're feeling. It's so easy for us as moms to just keep doing that we're not always paying attention to what we're feeling. And sometimes we really need to be in touch with how we're feeling, because we need to figure out what's going on in here. You got to feel the feels if you want to heal, Dr. Edith Eger of The Choice declared. She was a 16-year-old Holocaust survivor who grew up to become a psychologist. So you got to feel to heal, she says. So we're going to say, how am I feeling? Sometimes I think it's valuable to do this in front of a mirror. Super weird, I know. But if you stand in front of a mirror and treat yourself like you are your own friend and say, how are you feeling? You may be a little bit more natural in responding. It might look weird to your kids to watch you do that, but you actually might be able to identify it more if you are seeing your own face. So look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, how am I feeling? If you are not practiced with identifying your emotions, this will be a challenge in the beginning. There's a reason there's a whole bunch of emojis, so you can access your phone again and check out the emoji list. And if you must, just identify one of those emojis as your feeling. You could write down your feeling, or you could just say, I'm feeling this. If this is a moment of trigger or frustration, then you can ask yourself, what is the thought behind my feeling? There's always a thought attached to feelings. We create narratives or stories in our head that actually compel us to feel more or to think more about something in a certain way. Okay, let me give you an example. So my child has broken something and I'm feeling, you don't care about me. You don't care about my stuff. Why are you letting stuff get broken? That's my first thought. Okay, how am I feeling? Frustrated, disappointed, sad? Okay, what's the thought behind those feelings? Well, as I've identified, my child doesn't care about me because they let something get broken again. Okay, is it true? That's your first question. You need to ask yourself about your thought. Is your thought true? Well, obviously it's true, or why would I be thinking it? Well, it turns out there's a lot of reasons why we think our thoughts. And if you have a partner or a best friend or a close friend, you'll learn that how you experience a certain scenario is not the same as how they experience that scenario. That's because we have essentially been trained to think about different things differently. Some of that is how our culture frames things. Some of that is how our family culture frames things. Some of that is just how we naturally receive the world or experience the world. But we are rather practiced in how we think about different scenarios and what our thoughts are behind those feelings. Getting to know you and learning why you think what you think really is useful for you to unleash that feeling. I can't really understand why that is, but there is something very universally understood that when we go into ourselves and feel our feelings, question our thoughts, that we can actually get to the bottom of our thoughts and either reframe the thought and say, okay, there is more than one way of thinking about this scenario, or we can actually get a different perspective, or we can reframe it. There's different ways of saying that, but there's different ways of thinking about that scenario. So first we have to identify the feeling. Then we have to ask ourselves, what is the thought? And is the thought true? If we know that there's a possible other perspective on that thought, then we would be wise to choose the thought or the perspective that actually will serve and benefit you, your kids, or the scenario. Does it benefit me, my kids, or my homeschool if I tell myself that a child broke a dish, therefore they don't love me? No, not really. I can accept or alter my perspective and say, some kids drop stuff. It's a thing. Kids are childish. It's what happens. And maybe another way of approaching it is not to buy nice stuff and just buy stuff from the secondhand store until about 2030 or so. So there's always ways to reframe or alter our perspectives on whatever the thoughts are behind our uncomfortable feelings. These questions really help us to reframe our thoughts, which, as you can imagine, when you turn it in the other direction, starts to influence how we feel about different scenarios. Then we start to feel more patient or more understanding about our kids, understand where they're at, and be less reactive and more intentional in how we show up. These mindful moments have been useful to me, and as you can imagine, every aspect of life. And as I said in the beginning, there is always going to be the mess of this and you and everyone in this world. And when we accept the mess, we are more likely to address the mess instead of create a mountain of mess. Accepting that we're in a growth mindset, that we are always in the process of growth. It is part of why we're here, and we will always need to do it. And as homeschool moms, we always have yet another opportunity to learn it. So if you want a reminder of the tools that I just shared with you, you can find the PDF in a free downloadable PDF in the link in my bio on Instagram. It's called the Thought Care Reminder. I also share more about this in the 12-day self-care challenge that you can access free as well in the link in my bio. It's Christmas themed because it was popular last Christmas, and I always think that to whenever we start homeschool, because it feels more like a new year to me at the beginning of the homeschool year than January. So this 12-day self-care challenge is really like you getting a Christmas stocking under your tree before your homeschool year begins. A bunch of self-care strategies that will arrive in your mailbox each day for 12 days and will be practical tools that you can use, just like this one. I'd love to hear what your actual challenges are and how you address them. So put a comment in the link or in the comment section down below. And last thing I want to share is that we are going to explore how popular authors like Brené Brown can influence our homeschool. In the Homeschool Mama Book Club, you'll also find the link in my bio there and sign up for the very first Homeschool Mama Book Club. I would be delighted to get to know you more in that book club. And as a last thought, I want to share with you Van Gogh's quote that I think is so perfect for us homeschool mamas. Great things are done by a series of small things brought together. And that really is our homeschool life. A bunch of small things that we accomplish over the course of a very long time. So if you've got any thoughts or comments, put them in the comment section down below. And I look forward to hearing from you more. Talk to you soon.